Hey, good morning. This is Sean from Voices from the Dirt Road. Hey, we got a lot of things to cover this morning, and I want to make sure that I give you all the information in a nice, concise way today. But before I actually get into everything that the show is going to be talking about, because I know as farmers and it's just regular everyday people, we're actually watching what's happening in Washington D.C. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we also going to talk about several other things. But before we get into all those things, I want to make sure that all of our farmers are doing okay, because right now, what's currently happening on the ground, we are in the battle with the weather. Last weekend, at least here in Northwest Georgia, where I live, and throughout Georgia, and really throughout the South and the East Coast, we had a crazy weather day or days, and now the temperatures are very cold, and that has great effect on your animals and everything that you do. So before we actually jump into everything we're doing, I just want to play a video that I filmed last weekend when I was actually putting out hay, making sure our cows can actually make it through, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's happening this weekend. Well, back out here again. It's getting a lot colder. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's chilly out here now. Cows seem to be doing okay. They got plenty of hay. I'm actually going to put out another roll just to make sure they make it through the night. As of right now, no more new calves born. They're all over there kind of chilling. So, quick little update. I know all the rest of the farmers out there are getting it done too. When they talk about bad weather, that just means farmers. We just have to go to work. So, y'all guys have a good day. See you somewhere tomorrow. Let me get this hay put out. Yeah, last weekend was tough. I know my friends from Michigan and other places say, Sean, what are you talking about? It was absolutely no snow on the ground. Yes, that was true. However, we were expecting ice. Some areas got it. We didn't get it too hard here where I'm at in this part of Northwest Georgia. However, we have been dealing with very cold conditions. And you know, with that being said, you got to make sure you're taking care of your animals and all of those things. This particular week, pretty much the entire week, people have been dealing with, pipes bursting or power lines falling down because of ice and all those kind of things. And I think everybody's been seeing that on the news across the board. So kind of like I mentioned in that video that particular day, is when these things are happening, everybody else gets to go in the house. Farmers, we have to come outside and work, and I'm glad to be able to do that as a fellow farmer. One of the other things that I just wanted to bring up today is it seems as if we're about to go into another round of very cold weather, and also now here in Northwest Georgia and beyond, snow. So we'll play the news report from actually this morning. And then I'll give some more information on it, because I think we got to get ready for a second round.
Weekend in the row, you are tracking a winter storm.
Yeah, and this winter storm watch was just expanded. So the National Weather Service, this is brand new information within like the last 10 minutes, now thinks that Metro Atlanta could get 2 or more inches of snow in spots on Saturday. That's the reason that they've expanded the winter storm watch. This also includes East Georgia, and the further east you live, the higher your impacts will be on Saturday. Again, heavy snow possible to even likely Saturday morning into Saturday afternoon, with more than 2 inches in spots. Also very gusty winds. It's going to be very cold, so areas in blue should avoid travel on.
Yeah, this morning I actually watched the news. That was yesterday afternoon. But this morning I actually watched the news, and if y'all guys know exactly where I live or the part of the country I live in, I'm very close to Rome, Georgia, and they have actually now moved that 2 inches of snow back over here to Rome, then going all the way across the state and beyond. So you know, to my friends up in Michigan and other places, you'll say, man, that's nothing. But for us down here in the South, that's going to be a tough day. So I know today all the farmers are going to be out getting things prepared, making sure that the troughs are going to be able to survive this cold weather. So just be safe out there. And I know today we're going to get a lot of things prepared to get through this a second round of winter storms. This in the last 2 weeks has turned into a winter event for us, because the week before that, I think we were up in the 50s or 60 degrees. So a drastic change in our weather. So let's get into this show. Put up the stool. Let's tell everybody what we focus on. Okay, on this particular show, just to make sure, because we're always getting new people to the show, we try to focus everybody on agriculture. And when we say agriculture, we don't care if you live in the country or you live in the city. The reality of it is the show is built around staying focused on 3 different areas of our stew. And those 3 different areas of the stew is, one is livestock. As y'all guys know, I raise cattle, beef cattle. And we talk about livestock across the board. Doesn't make any difference what kind of livestock you have. We usually have guests and all those kind of things, but we also talk about row crops. As y'all guys know, row crops right now has really been in the news hot and heavy, because our soybean farmers, peanut farmers, and corn, all of those areas are being hurt now by the tariffs. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here after I finish talking about the stew when it comes to our soybean farmers. And then on top of that, we talk about forestry. And inside of that realm of forestry, that, at least in my mind, that encapsulates all of the fruit trees and specialty crops. That's where I'll put all of that. And then the other piece of that stool, because all of us, doesn't make any difference which part of this spectrum or the stool that you're on, we all feed back into the USDA, and the USDA is the one that helps us as we move forward in trying to make our farms more efficient. And right now, I think many of us are looking to the USDA for help in the area in RCS or in the area of the FSA, because right now we have some subsidies that's supposed to be coming. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in the future, but the last part of this stool, as you see up there at the top, is the Farm Bill. Right now, the Farm Bill is yet to be passed as the Farm Bill. Some very small pieces of it has been passed. However, we need a complete Farm Bill passed so that every farmer out there, everybody in agriculture out there, can be secure in what they're actually trying to produce here on their farms across the board. So that is our focus on here on this show, Voices from the Dirt Road. I love to hear from the people that are actually watching. You can always type into the chat. It'll come up on my screen and I'll answer your question. With that being said, let me talk a little bit about what's currently going on with our soybean farmers. Right now, our soybean farmers are still in the process of trying to make sure that they can sell their soybeans. Some of the soybeans are actually in storage facilities around the United States. China has bought some of our soybeans. What I was reading just this morning, it looks as China has bought the agreed amount that was agreed on the Trump administration. However, that 12 million or whatever the number was is still less than half of what they bought from the farmers last year. So that means our farmers are still in a bad situation. And on top of that, Brazil, their soybean crop has now came on the market, and their soybeans are cheaper than the United States. So we're looking to see how this is going to play out. I mentioned earlier about right now, many of the row crop farmers had about 60 days ago, had to go and sign up with the FSA so that they can get additional funding through some subsidies. My understanding, those subsidies are supposed to be starting to be paid out here in the February timeframe. We're going to keep our eyeballs on that and talking to farmers and see, is anybody actually receiving the subsidies yet? But those subsidies is to help them as we maneuver through these tariffs so that they can actually get crop loans for they can plant again next year. My concern is will the money come in time? Will the banks extend the money to the farmers, and will they be able to farm next year, or will we have a lot of farms going bankrupt? All those things are kind of out there to be seen, and things are going to play out. On top of all of that, currently as I sit here talking to you this Friday morning, the government is either going to stay open or it's going to shut down. This morning, the Senate is going to vote. We'll see how that plays out. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in detail later on in the show, but at least I wanted to put that out there that I think the farmer community needs to be watching what's actually happening in D.C. this morning, because if the government shuts down, the question then comes into play, how is this going to actually affect our farm and bridge, the FBA? How is it going to affect you? And if those subsidies going to come in time? So a lot of information this morning, but I did want to make sure in the early part of the show, so if you had to get outside and take care of your animals or anything else, you actually heard it from me, and you can call the USDA office and find out and get an update roughly around, I would say around lunchtime today. By that time, Congress should have had the vote, and you'll find out more information. So with that being said, we need to make sure we keep our eyeballs on what's going on in Washington, D.C. today, because if the government shuts down, it will have effect on our farmers and everybody across the board. But this morning, I'm focusing on the farmers, the farmers that are depending on these subsidies. Because I want to make sure that you get this information. With that being said, let me transition now to livestock. As y'all guys know, that I am in the beef business, and right now a lot of goodness is happening in beef, but we still got to struggle also. Prices are very high at the grocery store, and some things have happened in the past. I'll just say it that way. Some things that happened in the past that started to affect the price of cattle that we have on the farm. I think we have got that corrected. However, the country is running into a situation. Should we keep our heifers behind or not? Right now, I'm in the middle of calving season, and I'm just like you. I'm trying to make that decision based on the input costs and based on everything. Do I keep my heifers back to grow the overall herd, or do I put them out there on the market and take the money and then try to improve my farm? So we're going to talk through this, but let's play this video, and then we'll have a further discussion on the backside.
Keep in mind, our beef herd right now in America is very low. So it's as low as it was in the 1950s. So we do have a low supply of beef in our country, but we also have most of that beef being controlled by, they use the word cartel. I will just say by a business that's owned by a foreign country. So we have little control over that. And one thing that I say often is, if we want to be a sovereign, secure country, we have to secure our food supply. And that means, raising our beef herd to where we can at least feed our own country and feed ourselves, and having control of that and letting the market control the price. They always say high prices are a cure for high prices. If it gets high enough, farmers are going to raise more cattle, and then there's going to be more supply, and eventually the price will come down. So we have to work through all that, and that takes a lot of time.
And very quickly on that note, what are the factors that need to change to lower those prices, especially at the grocery stores?
Big factor is supply and demand. Right now we have a short supply of beef, and that is because, as I said, the cattle herd in this country is very, very low. And we just saw a report come out last week about, it's called a placements report. It shows how many heifers are being placed in feedlots. And basically what that means, if heifers are going to feedlots to go into the food supply, they're not being retained by farmers. And that report was basically dead even from what it was last year. So that tells a lot of us that maybe the herd size is not going to grow as quickly as we'd like it to. So that's the main thing that has to happen. We have to grow the herd size and produce more beef. But the thing is, when we had this situation in October where it looked like beef was going to crash for a little bit, guys like me were sitting out here and thinking, why do I want to invest in more cattle if I'm going to lose money in the future doing it? So we just need a steady, good, solid price for ranchers, and consumers need to have a good price for their, that they buy their product for. And part of that is tied into what we were talking about with the big four packers. We cannot have any market manipulation. We have to have the market be free and open for it to work itself out.
Well, Steve, Lucy, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Steve. Like I mentioned before the video, I'm making decisions here on the farm like many other farmers that I know throughout the country. Is as we are currently in this calving season and our heifers, for my audience that may not actually know what a heifer is, that's a female calf. Are we going to keep those heifers on the farm? And when they talk about growing the herd, it's not only growing the herd here on your personal farm, but all of our cattle are tracked. That means, are we growing the herd throughout the entire United States? Right now, the herd of the United States is at an all-time low in the last 50 plus years. And so the question is for farmers, is it worth it? Or will you be able to make money in the future instead of selling those heifers and bull calves now? Is it better for you to keep those heifers behind, grow your individual herds, and at the same time grow the herd here in the United States, so that, like Steve said, that we can truly feed America? But at the flip side of the coin, farmers did get a little spooked here about 2 months ago when prices in the grocery store started affecting prices on the ground when we actually sell our cows at the stock yards and wherever you decide to sell it. So a lot more information to come on this. What I'm planning on doing on my farm, I'm planning on keeping the best heifers on my farm when it comes to genetics. That could be a whole nother show, but I do plan to keep some of those heifers back this year, and perhaps the ones that I decide not to keep, some other farmer may say, you know what, this is great genetics for my farm. I'll buy from Sean instead of them going into the sell barn and then ultimately on into the hamburger or meat processing process. So a lot more to talk about there. A lot of moving parts. I think on the livestock side of the house, our main focus today is just getting through the weather this weekend. You just got to fight the day and win the day. So with that, let's move on to, if you looked at the first video that we put out, you noticed that I don't have a green and yellow tractor. I cannot afford a green and yellow tractor. The input cost is way too high on it for me. I'm just a small farmer like many other farmers, very small, but on the flip side of the coin, input cost is killing us. So let's just move on now and let John Deere tell us what they're actually doing, and we'll talk about it on the back end.
With today's Ag Day Minute, President Trump making a big announcement during a visit to Iowa this week, releasing details about John Deere's expansion plans. The company saying in a news release it plans to open 2 new U.S.-based facilities, a distribution center for equipment and parts near Hebron, Indiana, and an excavator factory in Kernersville, North Carolina. Now, Deere says it plans to open both next year. And following some layoffs, Deere also announcing it's putting 99 workers back on the job at its facilities in Davenport and Dubuque, Iowa.
You know, I grew up on John Deere tractors. Every tractor that was on our farm when I was a kid was a John Deere, and every tractor that's still on our farm in Southwest Georgia is still a John Deere. However, every last one of those John Deeres are either from the 60s or from the 70s. And every last one of them, if it breaks, we can actually fix it. So I'm not kicking John Deere. Only thing I'm saying is I think John Deere has started to price itself out of the market when it comes to everyday farmers. And like I mentioned, I'm not going to push any other tractors or anything like that. But I know when I got out the military and was looking at equipment, I could not afford a John Deere tractor at all. And it's not only the cost up front, but also the maintenance side of it, because there was nothing on the tractor that I could fix myself. Somebody would actually have to come out to the farm, or I had to take the tractor back, and that was going to be an additional cost. But like John Deere just mentioned, they are bringing back 99 people on the job. It was last month, I think we talked about this, but last month they actually laid off 4,500 people in that same area. So to say you're bringing back 99, I'm not 100% sure how that's going to help that economy out there. And then how's that ultimately going to help us as farmers? So I'm glad some people got their jobs back, but I think we still got a lot of things to do, because not only John Deere, but across the board, I think we all can agree our input costs, from fertilizer to you name it, is out of control. And I think we all need to be trying to figure out how can we get this input cost down, because if the input cost is extremely high, when you're selling your cattle, you're selling whatever product you're having, it's going to be very hard for you to actually make any money. So right now, that's why a lot of farmers are in a deficit. And that's why we're looking so close to see what's going to be happening in Washington, D.C. I don't think it should be in a situation where, as farmers, we always looking over our shoulder or looking to Washington, D.C. for help. But right now, we're in that vicious cycle that if help is not coming in from Washington, D.C., potentially a significant amount of farmers may have to go into bankruptcy. But then in addition to that, I am concerned that when they go into bankruptcy, will another farmer be able to buy their farm, or will corporate America come in and buy the farm, or worse, will some kind of contractor come in and buy the farm, and next thing you know, you got a beautiful housing development. Instead of raising animals and crops, now you're growing houses and city parks. So that's a whole different story. We're not going to talk on it too much, but I do want to take some time here and talk about what's currently going on in DC, because last night they were supposed to have a vote. There was some disagreements with one of the senators. I'm not going to get into the political side of it, but one of the senators disagreed with some of the things. And it looks as if right now that this morning, I'm thinking around 10, 11 o'clock this morning, they should have a vote. If that passed, it looks like the government will stay open. But the way I understand it is, even if it passes, because there's been some changes to the bill, the House of Representatives needs to come back. And I think all of us know our representatives are now currently at home. That means either they're going to come back in on Sunday, or they'll get back up there on Monday, and hopefully they can agree to keep the government open. But I'm predicting that we will have some kind of partial shutdown. The question is, can we get it fixed before you start seeing the effects of that partial shutdown? So let me pause there. Team, play the video that talks about this, and then I'll come back on the backside.
Risk of a partial government shutdown is rising as the Senate is scheduled to vote later this week on a House-passed $1.2 trillion funding package. However, following another fatal shooting involving federal immigration agents in Minnesota, Democratic lawmakers are threatening to oppose the bill due to DHS and ICE funding. With funding for numerous other agencies included in the package, there may still be sufficient Democratic support to secure passage of the bill and avoid a shutdown. The recent government shutdown in the fall lasted 43 days and delayed key USDA and CFTC reports.
Yeah, as you can see there, like I mentioned, this is not a done deal yet. Why do I bring it up? It's not political. I want to make sure that everybody out there understands that if the government shuts down, for whatever reason it shuts down, it could have a great effect on our the Farm Bridge Assistance Program. That's a mouthful, so I wanted to look at my screen to make sure I was saying it right. Usually what I say is the FBA program. The farmers know what I'm talking about. Right now, we are waiting, or they are waiting, because nothing's coming to me, but they are waiting. The row crop farmers are waiting to see when that money is going to start hitting their farms. And then if it hits, then that would help them pay off bills from last year, and hopefully help them be able to do a bridging strategy to get to be able to farm again next year. My concern is if the government shuts down, they get into a major fight, just like last time, I think it was 40 some days. Hopefully it's not that long, but if it starts stretching out, the next thing you know, those payments will not be coming here in February. And as you know, February is here next week. So that's kind of where we're at. I think it's important that as farmers, we pay attention to, obviously we have to take care of our farms, but somebody needs to be paying attention to the business side of it and saying, okay, where are we at? And then if the government shuts down, my recommendation to you today on Friday, to at least go by your lender and have a conversation of, if this thing goes sideways, how many more days do I get before we have to make a hard decision? So that's not easy, but I think it's important, because I look at a farm as a business, and you got to have a great relationship with your bank or your lender or whoever it is, especially in this particular time. And right now, I'm really talking to our row crop farmers across the board. And you know, like I said, I raise cattle. However, on my home farm with my brothers and sisters, we still raise soybeans, peanuts, cotton, and corn. So I have some skin in the game, just like you. However, just so happened this year, we did not plant that many soybeans. We were more on the peanuts and on the cotton side of it. But as you know, those commodities are also in the hurt locker. So we'll kind of get through it. But that's currently where we're at in DC. I'm not going to touch the political reason. That's not for this particular show. But I think as farmers, we just need to pay attention to Washington, D.C. and kind of go from there. So hopefully they'll get it all worked out. It's still some disagreements from last night, but hopefully they'll get it all worked out and it'll get passed so that the farmers can be taken care of. With that, let me move into a piece of the show, no matter what we're talking about. And maybe some people don't like for me to talk about it, but I think all y'all guys know I spent many years in the service. You probably can see behind me, you know, there's my little beef thing, but everything else is from my career in the military. And I'll be remiss if I didn't say this, because I know my fellow veterans are struggling, and we have systems in place for our fellow veterans. But still today, 22 veterans decide to take their lives every day. And so I would be remiss if I didn't talk to this new family that I have of farmers, because I'm just like you. And right now, with all the pressures that are happening on the farm, and the rural community not actually having the mental health facilities like you've been having in the cities and all those kind of things, I encourage you, if you're struggling for whatever reason, unbelievable pressure on you, pick up the phone, call this number, 988. No matter where you're at in the United States, somebody's going to answer the phone, and they're going to talk to you and help you get to tomorrow. And that's what it's all about, just getting to tomorrow. And tomorrow the sun will come up, things will be better. So I know there's a lot of farmers out there struggling right now, but it is systems in place to help you get over the hump. I know people are very concerned that they may be the last generation to own this farm. You're going to make it through it. If you're struggling, please, or if you know a farmer that's struggling, encourage him or her to pick up the phone or call for them and get them some help, because we need them to stay. We need them to be here tomorrow. So that's how we're going to end the show today. One of the things I just want to say to everybody, thank you for watching our show. We try to keep the show is diverse as possible to talking about all the different subjects. What I would say, if you know some farmers out there that want to come on and tell us about their farm or tell us about what they actually doing, or organizations, please have them reach out to us. The answer is yes. We don't gatekeep anybody. I want to make sure that all aspects of agriculture is discussed on this show across the board, because I'm a firm believer that we need to get more young people into agriculture. And just because I love doing cattle doesn't mean that somebody else want to do that. So I want to make sure that this show talks about everything across the board, so that somebody may see it on all the other platforms that it plays on later on the day. They may say, oh, that one little niche right there is what I want to do. And I plan to call that particular person, because I think y'all guys, I think it was last week in episode, I think I'm in episode, let me go back and look. This is episode 18. I think it was episode 17, where we actually talked to an individual out an hour that was talking about specialty crops, and she had trees and all those kind of things. So that's my intent, is to give you information, but at the same time, encourage other people to get into farming across the board. And when I say get into farming, I don't care if you farming 10,000 acres or you farming a garden behind your house. This show is for you. And I think it'd be one of the coolest things in the world if we get somebody to come on the show and talk to us about gardening and hoop houses and all those things, because I think so many people out there want to get into that part of farming, and then they can sell some vegetables to their neighbors and all those kind of things. So with that, hey, it is 7:32. Oh, look like I got something here. It says, good morning, friend. Take care during the time of prayer. All right. Hey, and thank you for that. Today I'm going to be getting on the road, headed back to my hometown. Unfortunately, we had a family member that passed away that's very close to all of us, obviously. So I'll be going home this weekend for that. So I appreciate that from the audience. So I thank you for that. So with that, we're going to close the show out, because guess what? The coffee cup is empty. Have a great week.